Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Future Engineering Career Talks from Bentley Education. This is the first edition of the Career Talks series that we're hosting in the Middle East region and Africa region as well. And today we're going to be talking about the ways that you can successfully start your career in infrastructure. And we can't be more excited. We have a very interesting lineup of industry experts for you today. You can expect each speaker to have the floor for about 12 minutes, and towards the end of the session, we'll also take some questions that you had shared while registering, and if time permits, we'll also have like a short Q&A towards the end. Um, so before we get started, let me quickly share about the panel of experts that we have today. We have Farah Naz, who will be talking about the growing trends and career opportunities in sustainable innovation across digital infrastructure that shouldn't be missed. Farah is the ESG lead for Middle East and Africa region at AECOM. She is an award-winning climate change strategist with over 20 years of vast experience in the construction sector that gained in USA, UK, Southeast Asia, and recently UAE as well. Farah has recently co-authored a book on Net Zero City, which is considered to be the first book published from the Middle East region. So welcome, Farah. We are very excited to have you on board today with us.
Thank you for having me.
Uh, thanks. After that, we have Dr. Dhanim Kashwani, who will be talking about the skills needed to excel in the career for in infrastructure. He's the board member of Society of Engineers UAE. He's also the first Emirati to become the chartered civil engineer from Institution of Civil Engineers UK. Additionally, Dr. Kashwani is a chartered environmentalist and also an experienced industry expert with major companies that he works as a team leader in Abu Dhabi National Oil Company for several years. Welcome, Doctor. We are very happy to have you with us today.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for hosting me, and it is an honor. And thanks for my colleague, and I hope that we have a good webinar today. Thank you.
Likewise, sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. After that, we have Professor Hudson Mukura, who will be talking about the different ways that you can make the most out of your degree while you're studying and stand out for potential employers. He'll also be talking about the perspective of engineering practice in Africa. He's an associate professor in the civil engineering department and is currently the dean of faculty of engineering and the built environment at University of Zimbabwe. Professor Mukurira has an extensive experience of working in the water sector and has worked with the Ministry of Water Resources and Development and the Zimbabwe National Water Authority as well. Prior to joining, this was all before joining the University of Zimbabwe in 2003. So welcome, Professor. It's great having you on board today with us.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be among the group this morning. Thank you.
Likewise, sir. And coming towards the end, we have our very own Velco Juretic. He's the director at Bentley Education and is responsible to lead and drive education engagement across various regions. He will be talking about how Bentley Education has been helping and will help you in the future to take a jump start in your career. Welcome, Zelko.
Thank you. Thanks. Great to be here today.
Great. So without any further delay, let's get started. Our first speaker, Farah Naz. Hello, Farah. Thank you for joining us. We're sure that all students are excited and very eager to hear from you. So are you all set? The floor is all yours. Give us a moment as we're connecting with Farah. Okay, so we're having some difficulty at the moment to connect with Farah. Dr. Kashwani, would you like to take over and talk about the skills that are needed for students to take their career forward?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Again, I want to thanks Bentley Education and for this opportunity. And from the topic that with the skills that engineer they need in this era and in the future, especially in infrastructure. So let's focus on the word infrastructure. When we say infrastructure, we're talking a layer under the layer of the built environment, and here we need many different disciplinary of engineering. So the first point that we need as engineer, you need to have a focus area, and this is very understanding. So we go to the university, we choose a major civil engineering chemical, and you focus on one area, and we got specialty. So you need this focus area even in the future in the infrastructure, definitely. But the next point that we need to be more holistic. And I think this is the university, they need to redesign their curriculum, that the engineer, they have the holistic approach. So for example, now we can let's talk about my area, civil engineering. Before, there was no interest in programming and civil engineering curriculum. But nowadays, even in EBIT accreditation, programming such courses such Python become a mandatory, and it is very important. So we need the same time the specificity and the focus in the engineer, but yet we need the holistic concept, because these engineers in certain point of their career, they will be leading as the organization and managerial roles. So it is important for them to understand the different kind of engineering. And this drives me to another question. Now we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and we are in the tech era. So it is very important that the engineers, they are aware about the technology is going around them. For example, now before we rely on AutoCAD, now in BIM, now there is technology such as digital twin, automation, construction, 3D printing. All these technology should be prepared and known by the coming engineer. And here we should note that the source of knowledge for engineer is not such only university. And it comes here the second point, that engineers should be, even the student who decide to enter the engineering thinks about the professional bodies. The question why? Simply because the professional bodies usually they have the concept of continuous education, condition learning, CPD, continuous professional development. And this is what we need, the mentality of all the engineers, that you keep learning, and that will help you to survive. Because in engineering, if you don't keep learning, especially in technical stuff, it will be really hard for you. In personal, I know many engineers who are now in director in many big organizations, but now it is hard for them to design, basic design floor or slab, because somebody didn't practice. They were so immersed in the managerial stuff. And this is what I'm saying, that you need to keep up with the technology and continuous education. So we mentioned about being focused, we mentioned how it is important to be holistic, and the continuous education. And now the other important point, that the engineer is to understand the industry and the market. You need to have the entrepreneurship mindset. It's extremely important. I believe that many university curriculum there embedded the entrepreneurship mindset. There is a new terminology in academia world called academic entrepreneurship, and that teach us that not the purpose of all research is to be published or to get patent. Actually, it should be industry driven. So here is the difference. As engineer, we have two kinds of research: the fundamental research, and in the fundamental research, you usually say it is science driven, and we say, is it true or not? But when it comes for applied research, it is industry driven, economic driven. We ask ourselves as engineer, does it work or not? And since we're talking about engineering, we should have this applied research and entrepreneurship. And many scientists or engineers didn't succeed in the entrepreneurship career, simply because they are not prepared either by university or by the different professional bodies. Let me give you an example. Sustainability, before it became a buzzword, in the Engineering Council in UK, sustainability was not one of the attributes to become a chartered engineer. But in ICE in 2003, they suggest the sustainability, because they said this is the future at that time, 2003, and then they added. I believe entrepreneurship it should be one of the skills that we need to teach all the engineers: how to build a business, how to invest, how to pitch your idea. This skill is very important for the coming engineer. And this drives me to understand it. So you may have the entrepreneurship, but you need to understand the economy. Now there is many forms of economy have been there, but for the infrastructure and the built environment, I believe the economy that will take over, circular economy. Circular economy become a really interesting word, because it is have different concept than the conventional or the linear economy, because we want to have our infrastructure in the operation mode as much as possible. So due to that, it all starts of understanding the circular economy. And in the infrastructure, the most important element of the circular economy is the raw material. Now, as infrastructure, the most two kind of material are using are steel and concrete, and they have significantly huge impact in this in the CO2 emission and the built environment. Due to that, most of the innovation come from the circular in the circular economy, in the knowing new materials. And as an engineer, it's very important to have kind of knowledge of the material that you are using, the durability of it, the longevity of it. And this is why I advise the young engineer to understand the concept of circular economy, because it will be really hard as an engineer if you don't design your building, your equipment with respect to the circular economy model as a business model. And this is also for the entrepreneurship. And I have two extra points that beside the circular economy is I advise the young engineer a point called biomimicry. Biomimicry, I usually believe that it is a solution that we need to go back anytime. Most of the interesting solution happened in the world, like fast train. It comes inspired from the nature, and due to that, including biomimicry as engineer as a tool in your pocket is very, very important, because every time you can go to the nature and exactly get inspired. And the last point that I want to add that it will help engineers to face the challenge is to understand financial language. You are in the organization. Maybe you want to talk about health and safety, you want to talk in a different project. But if you don't sum the numbers and you don't go to your CFO, it's hard to see it applied. And there is a very famous article in Harvard School. It said how to talk sustainability to your CFO. I believe most of the challenge that we face as engineers to create more green community or green solution is from the financial aspect, not from the technical. And this is very important as an engineer to understand the financial language and how they can talk to the financial senior in their organization. I hope these points that I mentioned that can help engineer to face the challenge in the infrastructure in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kashwani. Those were really some great insights, and I'm sure that will be helpful for students to take from today. As we move on to our next speaker, Professor Hudson, the floor is all yours. Would you like to take over from here?
Yes, thank you very much. I have a presentation which I'll share, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if you can see it.
Oh, we can.
You can?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good morning once again. It's nice to be here to share with the young engineering professionals on the path that they've chosen to pursue, which is engineering practice. Of course, I'm from the University of Zimbabwe. I've been introduced before. I'll go straight into the few slides that I've prepared, which may be of help to reflect on the future engineers that we have, the exciting young guys. Well, this is a very exciting profession in that it has supported humanity since time immemorial. And many engineering contributions are traditionally taken for granted, unfortunately. But it's the engineering solutions that provide means for other professionals to practice. Doctors, lawyers, accountants, everybody, they need instruments, gadgets, equipment that has been designed by engineers and maintained by engineers as well. And this engineering discipline has grown from civil in the early days to electrical, mechanical, but now we have countless exciting disciplines and sub-branches of engineering, which are more specific to the growing demands of engineering professionals. So what you find in the street mostly is that you find there are more civil, electrical, and mechanical engineers, but the other sub-branches that I've highlighted are also coming up, and it's quite interesting. And if you look at universities, some of us are in the academic institutions, you find there is increasing demand for engineering places, and the programs have increased, and the enrollments have also increased. This is a slide that I've taken from the internet, but just to give an idea of to the young engineers, prospective engineers, of whether there is hope, there is scope for being actively engaged in the chosen career of engineering. You find, by and large, there is actually a projected growth in employment or demand to engage engineers across the broad board, save for a few sub-branches or disciplines of engineering, which may experience a dip, but these are not much, and I wouldn't worry about them so much. The other interesting thing is that you find the new branches of engineering, biomedical engineering, for instance, you see how much projected change it is. It's topping the list there. You have civil engineering because there is still a lot of construction going around. Environmental engineering, health and safety, those are the new branches. Petroleum engineering, mining, geological engineering. These are new and exciting sub-branches which actually drive economies nowadays. So it's quite exciting, and there's so much room to venture as graduate engineers. But interestingly, there's also a global challenge of unemployment. This may be worse in some regions compared to others. But if I can just give highlights, in South Africa, for instance, after the World Cup, the demand in 2010, the demand for engineers dipped, it declined. If you come to Zimbabwe, where I am, the opportunities for engineering graduates, well, it could also apply to all professions, but if you zero in on the engineering graduates, the performance or activity is also linked to economic performance. And there are so many reports across the African continent where there are concerns of engineers following programs with uncredited institutions, leading to them not being certified, unfortunately. So we have to be very careful of where we are trained. And then another interesting aspect is that many stations in the public sector, government departments, they are in need of critical engineers. They are always reporting of vacancies. There are so many vacant places, but they still remain vacant for years. Yet there are so many graduates that are on the streets and are seeking employment. So there is some imbalance. There are questions that can be asked on what is happening. We have the young graduates who are looking for employment, for attachments, but sometimes you find that they are not getting places when the demand for such skills is actually there. If I refer to the Zimbabwe Skills Audit that was conducted in 2018, you find in engineering, for instance, there is a skills gap of 93% or 94%, which means there's so much room to train more engineers, more technologists to fill in the demand that is there. The same goes for other sciences. Look at business and commerce. They are in excess. Arts and humanities, they are quite high. So many people are being trained in the fields of where we actually don't need those critical skills. So still, it's a challenge for countries, if the trend is the same, that we have more engineering professionals trained. But okay, we have a forum here for young graduates. I have some tips for them. How do you make the first step through your journey as a practicing professional? I'm saying your degree class is a good starting point, because when you are at college, you are aiming high, score high marks, you get very good grade, but that will need to be backed by a balanced profile when you present yourself to potential employers. Most likely you will be well equipped with good theory, but very little appreciation of practice. So show that you are willing to learn. You have to impress your prospective employer. Your CV is the first marketing product of yourself. Be impressive to attract attention, but show focus. Don't fill your CV with all the other information which may not be specific to what the employer is interested in. And then during training or soon after, Endeavor to acquire soft skills and life skills. These may matter more during interviews, during probation periods when you get employed, and as you grow and advance yourself in the workplace. I've included there a box, which I also got on internet. I found it quite a good summary of what life skills are all about, how you survive. You know, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you dress up, you converse with friends, colleagues. You also need career soft skills where you are expected to improve on your written communication, verbal communication, be professional, time management, things like that. Then you venture into career skills where you have your abilities to keep someone successful at work, professionalism, networking, time management, leadership. I think Kashwani was talking of advancement to managerial positions, and then also having, you know, the ability to do project management and things like that. Indeed, they are very important because engineers rise very, very fast. And then there's always an overlap. Professionalism is coming in, time management is coming in, communication, creativity. I would still put leadership in there. So those will help you to improve on your employability skills. I have to conclude, but my parting message to you is that you have to accept reality that there are numerous job opportunities, but there are few that are being placed. So market yourself when you get the few and rare chances that come along. There are other alternatives besides formal employment. I think Kashwan was also talking of entrepreneurship and all that. It's very, very important in the modern day. You are also a potential employer yourself. So explore avenues to develop business ideas. The world is full of challenges which need engineers. And consider not just getting employed somewhere, consider other avenues, academic avenues. There's plenty of space for researchers and academics. And don't be embarrassed with what you think is a potentially good idea, but others may view it otherwise. So don't get discouraged. Many great innovations came out of wild and stupid dreams. And the good thing, a word of encouragement, is that engineers can work in any space. They have good grounding for adaptation and learning fast, so they can fit in banking sector, commerce, industry, even in churches, they can still do well. So you have perfect grounding to be so successful in any path that you end up pursuing. So I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor. Those were some really good tips and tricks for students to take on from here today. And yes, thank you. As we'd just like to confirm if Farah has joined and if she would like to take over from here.
Hi, Monica. Yes, I'm online. Should I present?
Wonderful, Farah. Yes, absolutely. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, professors. Your presentation was really on the dot. Okay, perfect. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me here. I thought I would take this opportunity to give a talk a little bit about my journey, because I trained as an engineer and I tried different types of engineering. It really touches the points that Professor Dhanim and other professor just touched on. So my name is Farah Naz. I work as a climate strategist, but I started my career as a building services engineer. But currently what I do is a little bit and very much different than what I started my career 20 years ago. So I trained as a building services engineer. I went out and I worked with my professors, different engineering and architecture company. I did design management and project delivery for a little while. Then I had my own company where I was delivering lots of construction stage projects for big developers. And then that's when my interest in sustainability came. And then I went back to school after 10 years of working and took a master's in architecture. So I have a building services degree and architecture from AA in London. And during my journey in the last 20 years, I managed to start my career in US, but moved to Southeast Asia very quickly because I realized that was a market where I can really understand the business side, the entrepreneur side, the project management side, which Professor Ghanem touched on. And then after masters, I worked in 8 years in UK, and that's where I got to work on net zero building, which is 12 years ago. So I was one of those young engineers who modeled the first net zero building in UK 12 years ago, and we actually went and did a post-occupancy evaluation. So my journey in engineering was in a different way. It was design management, it was project management, it was a bit of engineering production. And the reason I'm sharing this is that as young professionals, sometimes we want to really focus and want to know everything. And the idea is that your engineering journey can be very varied, and that's what should come through our presentation.
Maybe Velco, you would like to take over from here, and we'll connect again with Farah in a bit.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, once again, it's my great pleasure to be here today, and my goal for coming 10 minutes will be to give you a little bit of insight from our perspective, from my perspective, where we feel industry is going, and with that, what kind of jobs are and will be in a demand, and maybe to provide you with some resources or guide you towards the resources that might help you understand better this career path that you are choosing or that you choose or are about to choose. So a little bit about myself. As Monica said, I'm director for our education program based out of the Netherlands. And over the last 22 years that I'm looking after academia for Bentley, this really became more than a job. It became my passion, working with academia to help promoting engineering education, as well as help obviously incorporating our technologies into teaching. Over my tenure with Bentley, I have been involved in a number of educational projects worldwide, and those projects are ranging from projects for very, very young kids, not as young as this guy on a screen, obviously, but very young kids, to students, to postgraduate students, as well as programs for young professionals. Number of those educational projects have been recognized by local governments, like the one that you can see on the slide from a UK government. And our goal has always been the same, which is encouraging young minds to join infrastructure industry and really to support their ambitions by providing them resources to advance their learning and careers. Significant part of my time is spent on bringing together academia and industry, so that, as the slide says, teaching becomes more relevant to the industry needs, while academia gets better insight into what industry directions are. So why is that needed? Well, in my experience, and I think we heard a glimpse of that from Professor Mukura, is there is no good cooperation between industry, technology vendors, and academia. Result is very often a gap between the skills that students acquire during their studies and skills that actually industry expect them to have, especially when it comes to digital skills, because obviously that is our focus. And where there is a good cooperation between those parties, then students graduate with the skills that are highly in demand and can land them great jobs. So that's why that cooperation or bridging that gap between academia and industry we find incredibly important. So what are those skills that new generation of AC professionals needs? Well, forward-moving, forward-thinking infrastructure companies look for candidates with a good mix of skills and experience, and hopefully that experience is gained through internships. Working on innovative technologies, and those innovative technologies are ranging from digital twins to AR and VR, and think of metaverse world these days. They're looking for candidates that are ambitious, flexible, adaptable, and most importantly, and this is coming back to the point of Dr. Gaswani, they are thriving on being lifelong learners. So why lifelong learner? Well, academia is preparing you basically for your first job. Or if you are working, it is preparing you for your current job, or maybe for your next job. The job that you will have in 5 years from now probably doesn't even exist yet. And if it does, it probably will look completely differently in 5 years. So to stay relevant, to stay ahead of curve, it is very, very important to be a lifelong learner. A significant part of new graduates' jobs will be to drive innovation and increase productivity. to avoid project delays and cost overruns and so on. There will always be demand to make things better, stronger, and faster. So companies want to see students who understand the need for innovation and can make a positive impact on the world by solving the real-time issues. And they should understand the big picture. Job of engineering students in this interdisciplinary job. You're dealing with many different disciplines within your own company, but also outside of your company. So you need to have insight into the full project life cycle of infrastructure asset, if you're talking about infrastructure, from a planning and design to development, construction, all the way to operations and a maintenance phase. Right, so then what are those new jobs? How do they look like? As the outlook for digitalization in the AC industry is very bright, and you can see from a recent McKinsey report that we should expect up to 200 million additional jobs by 2030 in the AC industries. As digital twins are gaining momentum, it will also require more specialists and experts to handle the process of digital twinning, and also digital twin platform accumulate immense amount of data. So that is opening opportunities for data analysts and researchers, where individuals with analytical skills and experience in spotting data trends will be very much in demand. More construction companies are starting to utilize cloud applications and other technologies such as AR, VR, and again, think of metaverse in a different and interesting ways. There have been increased demand for skilled professionals who are trained in those technologies. Also with that, there will be new jobs coming up for security experts to fight the battle for with the cyber criminals in infrastructure. Now, if you are looking at the current trends and project growth in certain technologies, we can think of new job roles around drone and vehicle automation, automatic vehicle commanding, and so on. And the last and not least, with the goal of upgrading existing facilities and laying foundation for future economic growth, many nations are highly investing in roads, rails, utilities, and smart city development. So there will be, look at that space, there will be a lot of opportunities there. It seems that we listened. If I'm hearing to other presentations, if I hear from about academic entrepreneurship, if I hear about lifelong learning and marketing yourself in other ways than just applying for a job and putting your CV together, it seems to me that we are hitting the point there with the portal that we put together last year, with aspiration to become a single source of information for infrastructure for young minds opting for careers or considering careers in this area. So again, we are all about helping students developing skills to help them in a real world. And this portal is a way for us of doing it. We launched it back in May of last year, and so far we have around 1.2, 1.3 million visitors. So what do we provide here? We are an engineering company, so yeah, we are providing the software, and this is the same software that is used in those big engineering projects around you. So same software that we are providing to our that our commercial user, industry users are using, same software we are providing, obviously at no cost, to our academic users. At the same time, we are providing a training that will help students to get up and running with that software, and then also advance their knowledge as they progress in their studies and as they progress in the projects that they are working on. At the same time, we are providing educators with the resources. So not necessarily providing them with the full curriculums, but providing with the resources to help them develop their own teaching and teaching material and learning material for students. We're also looking at educators to work together with us and maybe contribute their contribute their content, contribute their learning and teaching materials so that we can share it with everyone else. But I think the part that I'm really mostly proud of, and I think this is a bit of a different approach from other technology vendors, is our goal here is to let students understand what are those careers all about, and again, confirming to what we are trying to do here. I saw yesterday on a LinkedIn, Institute of Civil Engineers UK is starting a new series where they're interviewing young engineers and asking them why did they choose for careers in this industry, and obviously trying to make young minds enthusiastic about those careers. And this is exactly what we are doing here. So if you want to learn from a young people, why did they why did they opt for studies in this industry, and then what is helping them to do their jobs properly, and what is helping them is next step in their careers, tips and tricks. So then we have those students interviewing professionals, interviewing executives on what are those new skills that you are looking for in a new graduate. So by doing that, I think we are helping a lot young minds understanding which skills are important, how to generate, how to get those skills, and how to present themselves, because those young people, they don't even know how to write a CV, and someone needs to help them with that. So all those kind of resources, and then coming to the point of Professor Mukura, with some digital twin student design competition or student competitions that we are doing. This one here that I'm showing is connecting Minecraft world with our technologies. This is something that you can really, as a young mind, you can really shine in front of potential employers, because here you can show your practical skills from everything that you learned. How did you apply that to solve a big world project, and showing not only what you learned, but how to implement whatever you learned. Another thing is we have our communities, where we are basically connecting, again, where we are connecting students with the young with the industry for the sake of mentoring, or developing this mentoring culture, where young minds that are now graduated and are working for companies are paying back to the community that helped them become who they became. And a new thing that we are developing is our talent corner that is in progress right now, where we will be displaying, or our industry users will be displaying jobs that are available. There will be some talent quizzes and a customized contests, where again students can shine and show what they learned in front of potential employers. So again, this is our approach. This is what we do, and we would love you, whether you are students or you are educator or you are industry member, to come and work with us to help basically students to jumpstart their infrastructure careers. So that's all from me, Monica. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Velco. What I'll do is I'll post, you did announce about the Digital Twin Design Challenge that we are organizing, and the registrations are still open. In the chat box, I'll put up the link of the page wherein students can go right away and register themselves for the competition. And yes, we finally have Farah back. Farah, the floor is all yours again.
So is it okay for me to show the slides very quickly? The reason I'm talking about Museum of the Future is that this is a project where I led the innovation and sustainability, and I'm a building services engineer trained as a service engineer. And this was an amazing project where 17 different engineering fields came together. And if you look at the complexity of the structure and the flooring, we had engineers who did people flow movement, structural engineering, the diagram. So there's so many ways different talents of engineering could be used. Even just to give an example, there were 7 different entry points, and we had an engineering team studying the traffic management of how people's body would flow through the spaces. And when we looked at sustainability and innovation for that, really understanding how the microclimate will affect the thermal condition inside of the space. We also undertook a study outside of the space to understand what is the impact of this silvery facade on the microclimate of the environment. But what was also interesting is that we had renewable technology that connects the batteries directly to the museum. And we also undertook studies to understand where is the best place to put all these PV technology, because PV creates, if it's put in an urban environment, it creates a lot of urban microclimate. So what I'm trying to present is that follow your dream of understanding whatever engineering you would like to study, but really understand and get the depths of it to apply the knowledge into the modern day buildings. The next project I would like to touch on is there's plethora of projects you will be seeing, but on the top right is the Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi, Expo Sustainability Pavilion in the right-hand side, then BIA headquarters. All these buildings are now targeting sustainability accreditation, that because a lot of good understanding of HVAC system, civil infrastructure, there's so many different engineering skill set that's required to build buildings of this caliber. What you see on the left upper side is the Tinsfield Castle. It's a National Trust building based in UK, and we had group of engineers understanding, because UK has a very cold climate, how to make the HVAC system and the mechanical system more conducive to preserve heat and warmth and occupant comfort. So, and then on top left is the first carbon neutral school in UK, which I had the privilege of working on. But my work there was completely energy modeling of the HVAC system, the district heating system, because it's based in UK. And what I got a privilege of doing is taking all this technical knowledge and applying to what you see on the bottom left of the screen is an Ugandan school. So we really went into how do you create schools that's easily replicable in cities of Uganda with very minimum of cost. So structural engineering, architecture, passive, civil infrastructure. Even there are places in Uganda where it rains a lot and where there's a high wind load. So there's traffic management, wind load study. There's so many different varieties of ways of engineering. So I really want to break the mindset that engineering is just civil or petroleum or infrastructure. There's so many things that a young mind can get involved with. This is an infrastructure project. So on the top right side, what you see is Alula. It's a conservation area. 20 years, the region of Saudi Arabia will be spending next 20 years recreating this preservative city. And that city will require archaeological engineers, civil infrastructure, ground engineers, and all sorts of engineering to build this city, to ensure that the cities are futuristic, more smart cities, and have a net zero transition and goal. What you see on the bottom left of the screen is Neom Line. This is a 170 kilometers long city that's based in the Neom coast in Saudi Arabia. And many of you might not know that Saudi Arabia has 7 different climatic conditions. It's not always desert and dry. There are conditions where it's very Mediterranean climate. So as engineers, you really can get into the microclimate studies of really understanding how to apply your knowledge in an infrastructure level and understanding the occupant comfort. And on the bottom right, you see Copenhagen. Copenhagen, this is a project I worked on 14 years ago, where they wanted to be the first 2025 green Copenhagen, and now they are achieving their target, and climate is a big driver. So what I want to get on the next part of the slide is what are the key drivers that we see in the region. So cities are developing, the global population will increase magnificently, and it's estimated 2.5 billion people will be living in our cities by 2050. And essentially what it means that we would be needing 230 billion meters square. Yes, 230 billion meters square of new floor space. That is building the size of Paris every single week. But if we take a step back from our cities, cities consume only 2% of our land and are responsible for 70% of global greenhouse gas emission and 70% of global waste. So there's a huge conflict as we build our new cities. They not just only have to be smart, they have to be really, really climate smart. And you will see there's a lot of conversation about what is a climate smart city. And that is the next conversation. In Middle East, we build cities when the water index is the first. That means we don't have any water. The electricity consumption is 9th highest in the world. And the food we use to eat, they all come from abroad. So as engineers, as architects, as built environment professionals, we are building and working in an area where it's food, energy, water, nexus, and there's so many type of engineering that are employed to really understand how do we make resilient cities for our future. Now, the second trend that I would like to talk about is the sustainability model. So for the last 40 years, the sustainability model that engineers, architects are using is what you see on the left side of the screen, which is the three is the social, environmental, and economic. And now engineers and especially Forum for the Future in UK presented this new model of sustainability, which is the 5 capital model of sustainability, which you see on the right side of the screen. So now the engineering conversations are more about how do we preserve and use our engineering for the natural capital, which is our biodiversity, human and social capital, and manufactured and financial capital. That's where the 3D printing technology, the infrastructure that we're building, all these conversations coming in, and all the professors touched on this point. That's where the civil infrastructure, the ground planning, the water infrastructure, the flood protection plan, all these different type of engineering comes in creating our cities for the future. The next trend that I would like to talk about is linear model of city and circular model of city. Professor Dhanim touched on that what is a circular city model and circular economics. I would really ask you to look at this reference that I have, Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They have a lot of information about how do we make our cities circular and what are the key decisions we have to make. What you see on the left is a decision-making tool that I as an engineer use with my clients when I'm trying to develop circular economic model of cities. And it's essentially understanding it's not just reduce, recycle, and reuse. It's about upcycling. It's really understanding how do we use product and material and decisions to make our cities more climate resilient. The next trend that I would like to talk about, this is a mosque. It's in the middle of a desert, and the whole idea was urban comfort. And we looked at dynamic urban modeling. Now, this is another aspect of engineering. There is a field of engineering, especially in this part of the world, where outdoor thermal comfort is really, really becoming big. And if you're designing a mosque, especially for outdoor space, the idea comes, how do you use the warm desert wind? So we run a lot of outdoor comfort modeling in different parts of our projects to define what is the balance of health and well-being to outdoor comfort. And that is a set of engineering that we might not be often known about. So it requires understanding of basic engineering knowledge, physics, chemistry, but then you also have to understand the health and well-being side, the architecture side. So what I'm trying to open up in this conversation is engineering is not linear. It's a circular way of understanding. And as each of you follow your passion of engineering and bring in the other ideas to really create an effective, resilient spaces, there's so many areas to explore. The next part is innovation. Now, innovation is a big word and it's been using for ages, for last 10, 15 years. But nowadays, innovation is used more for a decision-making tool for our projects. Like, for example, cost and carbon modeling, that's a type of innovation. Really looking at different materials and see how we can use innovation in a more effective way for our projects and for our cities. So I want to touch not too much on it, but this is the UAE's innovation hub, if I may say, and these are the investments that coming in innovation. But it's really interesting to see how innovation will become the catalyst of our careers in engineering. The last thing I want to touch on is, I don't know whether you know what the graphics means, but these are climate stripes. There's a website on the bottom that you can explore, whichever world you are, to see what are the climate stripes. And essentially it means that from 1850 to now, the world has risen the temperature. So the world world was more blue climate stripes, and now it's red. But this is a recently a published book that I published on net zero cities, and we reversed the climate stripes. So it's saying that we want to go from a hotter world where there's a lot of carbon emission to a more blue climate stripe, which is a cooler world. Now, as a student, I think you must be hearing about net zero and about climate emergency and biodiversity. And essentially, all what it means is understanding a good knowledge and understanding of a city and how a city works. And as engineers, whatever engineering you choose, there's a lot of things could be learned and dealt, and understanding how we can make our cities more climate resilient. I won't touch on too much on these, but essentially it's a combination of urban governance, urban design, urban infrastructure, urban economics, which is circular economy, and the urban culture and society. But essentially, in order to go through climate emergency, and if we look at the future trends, climate emergency is not a technical emergency. It's not a technical challenge. It is not a technical challenge. It is a mindset shift. So in my book, I talk about these 7 principles. But essentially what it is, after the COP26 happened, we all realized as a community, as an industry, that in order to address climate emergency, we all have to up our game, and we all have to look at hybrid professions. So civil structural engineers really need to understand what material properties and qualities are, and architecture really need to understand what the HVAC systems and how to make the passive design really work for a city level and a master planning level. So these are the kind of concepts that I touch on. And essentially, this is a bit of a challenge, but the whole world is looking at a net zero emissions and how we can reduce our emissions. And there are concepts out there that talk about that we can push our emissions to lower carbon emissions in next 10 years, 20 years time, because the interesting part, the investors modeling and the scientists modeling doesn't really match. So the scientists are saying that we need 10 to 15 years to really lower our carbon emission. But what does it actually mean? Lowering our carbon emission essentially means we have to engineer our buildings, our cities in a very, very smart way. So this is a kind of a framework that I present in my school, in my book, working with my co-author, where we interviewed and looked at 113 case studies globally, and 112 case studies were really good examples, but one was really not something not to do. And we entered that into the book to really open up this conversation. What are the type of thinking and engineering and architecture we really need to do, and what are the career choices we have to make to really get to a net zero carbon world? And essentially in the book, we talk about a roadmap. I don't expect you to read it, but what we found is, if you look at the left-hand side, it's all about governance, it's all about urban design, energy infrastructure, it's about circular economy, and it's about innovation at scale. So essentially, the idea is to present this idea that whatever engineering you choose to do, follow your profession, follow your passion, follow your curiosity, but always be open, because next 10, 15 years time, because of this climate and biodiversity emergency, we will see a lot of hybrid thinking, a lot of co-creation and collaboration. And it was essentially the 3 key learning from COP26 was, number 1, co-creation, collaboration is the next way forward. Secondly, we really need to bring climate science into our day-to-day thinking, and doing that means we need more pilot case studies and more projects working in the region and across the globe to learn the lessons from it and really apply it to our projects. And lastly is we need innovation at scale. Now, in order to all that, what we need is urban twin. One of the professors touched on that. The conversation is not just a digital model anymore. It is about creating an urban twin, which is a collection of digital models, a live model of our cities. And essentially the idea is that these live models should really know how the traffic flow is going and where the energy and food infrastructure is coming from, and what is the circular economy, what is the scale of circular economy. Because unless we look at these concepts together, it's really hard to look at one in isolation, and it wouldn't really impact what we call a climate resilient cities. So an open call to all of you, and I'm so glad to see that Bentley has this digital twin competition, because this is a really great way for you to embed in these concepts and test this concept and see what works and what are the lessons we can learn from. I hope we can continue this conversation forward, and really thank you for your time and for your attention to see this presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farah. This was really insightful and helpful. I'm sure that students were excited to see the slides that you were showing. And we can quickly move to the last segment of this session today, which is the question and answer session. Since we have already exhausted our entire time today, what I can do is I can quickly take one or two questions that had come to us during the registration process. There was one interesting question which Dr. Kashwani, you can take up, wherein the student is asking how important it is to pursue a master's degree or higher education, which will it facilitate them to find a job? So how important is master's to find a job? That's what the student is asking.
Okay, so when you decide to pursue, this is a very usual question. Should I go to vocational certificate or should I do the academic certificate? So if your purpose to become an academic, then definitely go to conventional way, the postgraduate study, it is the way. But in terms of job and market, it doesn't matter. I mean, uh, personally, I advise more vocational, like doing chartered engineer, chartered manager, PMP, because again, it is market driven, industry driven. So these vocational certificate I highly recommend it, and this is what I'm saying that during university as a young engineer, try to register one of these this body, for example, civil engineering, ICE, and mechanical IMechE. All these things, it will give you the flavor of the need of the industry. So if you're looking for industry, then I highly advise to do a vocational certificate, and there is some master program that they have the flavor of vocational and academic.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's a very good perspective to this question, sir. Let's quickly move to the next question. Zelko, you might take this up. A particular student is asking, how is Bentley Education helping us with jobs?
Well, first of all, Bentley Education is helping you to get the skills that are necessary to do the jobs. And I've been, especially if you're talking about countries in development, and I've been to many of them, and I saw many construction projects happening, and then meeting with the professors and students, and they are telling me that they don't have the skills to work on those projects. And this is where we are helping to close that gap. So first and foremost, it is about closing that gap of digital skills that exist in many cases. So skills that will help you to do your job, and it will help you to be in the running to get a job on one side, and then on the other side, as I mentioned, maybe on a little bit as a broader perspective, letting students understand what those jobs are and which skills are in demand by interviewing, but letting students interviewing industry and explaining, because as all of the speakers mentioned, you do get your during your studies, you do generate skills, but some of them are more academic than others, and some of them are more applied than others. And it is very important to focus on the right skills that will help you to land the job and then to do your job well. So this is what Bentley Education as a program, and with that also our portal is providing.
Certainly, Zelko. What we'll do is I'll be posting the link of the education portal here. We'd request all the students attending, go by yourself, see the portal, register yourself, and just get started. The next question, Professor Hudson, since you have experience in the water industry, there's a particular question that talks about what is the lifespan of infrastructure such as sewage and water pipes and when it should be replaced. Do you think you can help the student with the answer?
Yes, I can try to answer him or her. Yeah, it's really it depends. We are looking at between 10 to 20 years, roughly, but really depends on the material that you have used. So if you use tougher material, more durable material, then you are likely to see a longer lifespan. So what I would advise the participant is to check when they, let's say they are at design stage, they are saying, what material are we using? Is it cement, ferro cement? Is it plastic? Is it steel? What are the characteristics and what are the expected lifespans for a particular service that it is giving? So it's not a one-way answer to just say it will last for 15 years, but that depends on the material that you have used, how durable it is, but also how the workmanship involved when you actually construct. Did you do it properly? Are you maintaining it and all that? So it all adds up to what it will amount to in terms of replacement. You can't just say, I've placed it, it will take me 20 years, and then you walk away, you want to come back after 20 years. Maybe it will last shorter, maybe it will last longer. That would be my quick reaction to that.
Thank you, Professor, for that answer. We have another question. Farah,
Excuse me, can I just add a very important point that since we talk
Mhm.
about future engineering, please for all the engineers to focus also on mental health, because many engineers are they are facing a lot of mental health and they are shy and they have a stigma about it. Please, I advise also other professors to talk about it. As an engineer, you will be on the site, you have a pressure, you work as a contractor. So you need to have the basic education about mental health, emotional intelligence. Please, as a young engineer, don't feel shy about it. Read about it, learn how to deal with the stress, because it will help you how to stay engineer with resilient, to become more resilient engineer.
Certainly, Dr. Kashwani. I mean, you brought a very important point. Farah, would you like to add something on it?
Yes, I would, and I totally agree with what Professor Kushwani is saying, because as engineers, we have to become really resilient. And as a young engineer, sometimes you see a lot of unwanted behaviors, negatives, and aggressions because other people have been there for a long time and they have this that I have more knowledge over you. So as engineers, it's really highly important to understand what is your value and look after your mental resilience and really build those muscles, because mental resilience is a muscle that you can build in. Actually, in British Army, they train the young soldiers how to build mental resilience. So when they're sent in war, they can manage their own emotions in a very effective way. So that's one thing, because Professor Koshoai shared this, that communication, business skills is extremely important, and mental resilience. So this is something, because often students are so focused on doing good results and technically fit, but how you communicate your technical knowledge to a non-technical client, or how do you create that space for yourself, is quite important. And this is something, it's their own journey that they have to take, while reaching out to mentors and industry professionals to guide them and advise them.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that point up. Let's move on to the last question. Farah, you should be taking this up. This is particularly talking about ESG career opportunities in the Middle East region and what are the skills and the expertise that are in demand. You did cover up a bit about it in your presentation. Maybe you would just like to highlight it again.
Yeah, so what I want to highlight is that ESG is a new buzzword for something that has been there for 20 years. Environmental work that has gone throughout globally is very much part of that E part of the environment part, which is environment and sustainability. S is the social governance part, which in UK, when you're working on a project, because I worked in UK for 10 years, you always look at the social impact assessment. But in this region, in Middle East and Saudi Arabia, this is a new concept. But we are looking at, as ACOM, I lead the innovation and ESG. And when we are undertaking a PV plant, for example, or a renewable plant for a certain client, we always undertake a social impact assessment. The clients don't really ask for it, so it's our opportunity to really inform the client that a social impact assessment for a renewable plant is quite important. Or for example, if a city decides that they're going to have EV charging station, which is electrical vehicle charging station, we undertook a study for the Abu Dhabi government to understand what is the socio-economic impact. So yes, environmental social governance is is important. This is becoming a new buzzword. It's driven by the market and the investors, and anybody contributing to that and studying that. Yes, there is opportunity, but we always need to understand what is the interconnection relationship of this. What we don't want is this to be just another CSR tick box exercise. What we really want is environmental social governance to really impact the way we make decisions about our infrastructure or our road network. Like one of the professors touched about the infrastructure, like how do we make our infrastructure more green and what materials? So these are all part of the thinking process of the environmental social governance. So for the student who asked the question, yes, it's a great question, but we always have to constantly understand the interconnection relationship of ESG to the work we do every day, to the cities we build every day, and to the future vision of the cities of who we want to be. Because there's a huge driver for cities now for livability and happiness. Every city wants to be happy index. Every city wants to have a good livability, but in order to have good livability and happiness, you really need to understand city from a circular economy, innovation, well-being perspective, and really understand, for example, if a city has a high obesity level, do you build hospitals or do you build better parks? You know, these are the questions we should be asking our city officials. Like, for example, in UK, when the Olympics finished, all those parks were converted to walking areas because the neighborhood around had elderly people and they wanted to go and had their afternoon work when their blood pressure was or sugar level was down. So there's park tracks was created based on how the parks can become a healing gardens for the neighborhood. So these are the kind of integrated thinking that we want to bring in our cities and our thinking through this ESG agenda.
That's great. I mean, you brought some great points up, Farah. Thank you for taking up that question. That brings us to the end of the session today. For all the attendees, you'll be able to find the recording of the session very soon on Bentley Education's YouTube channel. The link is being posted in the chat box. And do make sure that you follow us on all the social media channels. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Go yourself and register on the Bentley Education portal. And we would like to thank our speakers for sparing their valuable time and joining us today. All the attendees for your patience, and we hope that you've learned a lot from today's session and going back. Thank you once again.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank
you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.